Well, we're back after a winter break in the Premier League, and we're going to be looking ahead today to Matchday 22, which is a midweek edition over the midweek of transfer deadline day from Tuesday the 30th of January up to Thursday the 1st of February. There's a full fixture list in the Premier League, and we're going to run through all of them, as well, of course, as previewing Luton Town versus Brighton in detail. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. If you are, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. And as always, please get your predictions in the comments below. And if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap when we look ahead to the next set of fixtures, which of course will not be far away. But for now, let's look ahead to a very big game on Tuesday night, because it is Luton Town versus Brighton. For Luton, a first Premier League game since the 12th of January, that Friday night at Burnley. What an important goal that was late on. And interesting to see in the Tottenham City Cup tie the other day, something very similar happened. So we can hopefully put some of that controversy to bed and maybe see some consistency now. For Brighton, it's been a little bit less time off because they've played against Wolves the second week of the winter break. So they got a 0-0 draw there after a 0-0 at West Ham back at the start of January too. For this though, because it's been so long since league action, albeit both sides didn't lose their last game, we have to reflect mainly on the FA Cup performances at the weekend to see how sharp both were looking. And I think based on the performances, you have to say both are looking pretty good at the minute. Now, if you remember, Luton went away to Brighton on the first day of the season, and it was basically a summer party on the beach. It wasn't a great performance, it was a learning experience, but we were missing some of our more mobile defenders there, the likes of Osho unavailable. Ted and Mengi hadn't even joined the club at that point, nor had Lokonga, and Barkley wasn't fit. So it wouldn't really be fair to say that the nucleus of the team is going to be anywhere near the same as what we'll have this midweek. However, we were carved open there at will, and in terms of style, teams such as Brighton are probably the biggest nightmare for a side like ours to play against, because we thrive on sides that can't match the energy and can't match the fitness of our team. And Roberto De Zerbi's Brighton are one of the few sides that can match it and possibly even eclipse it. For now though, let's look back at the weekend's game, because Everton versus Luton Town in the Cup, same outcome as the league fixture, a 2-1 Luton win. Heroics late on, and it was a bit of a nostalgic goal for us from the EFL, wasn't it? A Luke Berry corner, prodded in eventually by Corley Woodrow in the 96th minute, a man who's taken a bit of stick this season, despite not really doing anything wrong. Of course, he's not been able to make as much of an impact as he like in his odd sub appearances, but it's a reminder that our squad is important, because he is a player who is primarily an impact sub under Rob Edwards, is going to come on for 10, 15, 20 minutes when we need a goal in games or when one of the strikers needs a rest. And despite what you say about him not having a huge impact in some games, he scored arguably the biggest goal last season in that turning of the form over the Christmas period at home to Norwich with 10 men. And he scored a massive goal this season now away in the FA Cup to get us within 2 games of Wembley. So you've definitely got to give him credit. He stuck in there, played with a broken hand and scored the winner. And Luke Berry was fantastic when he came on too. Great to see some of the old guard contributing. Pelly was brilliant as well off the bench. And we got a little bit of a rest in some of the key players ahead of Tuesday. It obviously looked quite planned with the likes of Barkley, Doughty and Adebayo coming off. So into the hat for the 5th round. We'll enjoy that draw on Monday night. I'm recording this on Saturday night just after the 2 games, so I won't be able to comment on who we face yet. But for Brighton, it was perhaps a more emphatic scoreline away at Sheffield United. Okay, not a great finish to the first half, but João Pedro, as much as you hate to say it as a Luton fan, being a former Watford player, Roberto De Zerbi has unlocked the player that has always been in there. A hat-trick for him, yes, with 2 penalties, but he's been a star throughout this season. Buonanotte with a fabulous strike to open the scoring at the end of a brilliant team move. And even Danny Welbeck contributing too. Brighton are a really good side, and despite at times mixing with different competitions, obviously being in Europe and having a few injuries too, they've done really well, and we all know they're a great side to watch. What we want to focus on here though is a changing of style for Luton as well, because we pretty much know how Brighton are going to set up, but Rob Edwards is starting to bring his forest green style and his preferred playing philosophy to Luton, because those of you who don't go to the games and only base it on what you hear off the pundits on TV, will have you think that we're just a long ball team who pump it up to the striker and do what we can. We heard that in constant expression in the preview from TNT before the Chelsea game and before the Burnley game too. 2 games that we went on to have more possession, more shots on target and a higher pass completion rate than the opposition. However, on a serious note, it is an evolution of style because at the start of the season, we were very pragmatic, and maybe it was due to a learning experience, a lack of belief, or maybe just not wanting to push the boat out too much after those two pretty comfortable defeats in the first two games. But gradually, we've grown into this season, and it's now 4 games in a row. The Chelsea one, Sheffield United on Boxing Day 2, then Burnley and Everton against Premier League sides where we've had more of the ball. And against Newcastle, we have more shots on target as well. And actually, I think we have more of the ball in that one too. So 5 games in a row. And it's really been an evolution of style as we've become more aggressive, more attacking, and certainly use the ball better rather than just being defensively focused. And while that has meant we've let in a few silly goals, we saw that against Chelsea in particular, there is no doubt that Luton are improving and some of the players are starting to really come to the fore. I've said it a lot. It's been mentioned in live streams and things as well. People even last week asking about Woodrow and whether he's good enough and that. But the thing you've got to remember is for most of this team, they'd never played Premier League football before this season. People like Adebayo looked very quiet the first couple of months. Now looks a centre forward ready for the Premier League in his own right. Mengi had a slightly slower start, has improved massively since. Similar for Alfie Doughty after starting the season behind Ryan Giles. We all know what's happened now. He's overtaken him and has become one of the star players in the team. And so many different players are contributing. Great to see even youngsters like Joe Johnson off the bench at the weekend looking great. And Luke Berry looked immaculate when he came on, I've got to be honest. So lovely to see from a Luton point of view. And those old boys from the EFL, from League Two, from the National League, they've still got their bit to contribute. The likes of Pelly, Berry, etc. So don't you worry about that. I think that's going to make this a more interesting game. Luton, of course, have got the threat from set pieces. We saw where our goals came from on Saturday. Of course, it was wide areas where we got in behind against Brighton on the opening day to get the cross in and win the penalty for our goal against them there. And if it wasn't for an individual error just after, we probably wouldn't have been 4-1 down by the end. But it's one of those things. We chased the game a bit too much, and going 3 or 4 up front against top sides, which Brighton are a top 8 side, is probably not ideal for your first Premier League game. But we've learned since then. Brighton have definitely improved as the season's gone on again as well. They're looking somewhere near back to their best recently. And yes, they've been frustrated by very organised and disciplined West Ham and Wolves sides, who both were without their key attacking players at times in those games. We've got an opportunity with more people fit than we've had for most of the season to really try and create an impression. Under the lights at Kenilworth Road, we normally make a good fist of it. And I think this will be a pretty tight game. However, I just feel that Brighton's style is something that is a bit too much for us. It is the one that's a nightmare for us to come up against. And based on that, if it'd been most other teams in the league, I'd have probably gone for a Luton win in midweek. On this occasion, I'm going to go for Brighton to nick it by 2-1. But generally when I do that, we do manage to pick up the odd point. So I'm not going to complain if I'm right. And I'm happy to look silly every time if it works out. But for me, Brighton to nick it by 2-1. But arguably, the way they're playing at the minute, away to Newcastle, could be a more fun one on a Saturday. So with that out the way, let's move on and have a recap of the rest of the midweek games and the predictions that I've gone for. As always, get yours in the comments below and see if you can beat or match my score. And of course, we'll be back on Friday to do the weekend ones too. But for now, before we go and get into that, we need to have a recap of Matchday 21, which was almost a record week for me. I just went 1 goal too high when it came to all of the draws, basically. I changed the Burnley-Luton score at the last second from 1-2 to 2-2. And if I hadn't done that, I would have won the match day, but wasn't to be. The other 1-1 draws I went for, Everton, Villa, Brighton, Wolves, both finished 0-0. And I was also disappointed by City's late win up because I was seconds away from a perfect score there as well. But overall for me, it was 8 points in the end. Arsenal's win, Liverpool's win, and a perfect score for Chelsea's 1-0 against Fulham got me overall to that 8-point total. And only one of you in the comments managed to beat me this weekend. It was a lower scoring one than I expected. And to be fair, the games were generally lower scoring than we all predicted. So I got 8 points, but beating me, the only person to reach double figures, Sam got 11. Well done to you. Perfect scores in there as well. A very good effort. You win Matchday 21. But on to Matchday 22, and a quick caveat. I am doing this on Saturday night, so I won't have a couple of the FA Cup ties to base this on. I can't do Sunday's games, and I'm recording this just before kickoff in Fulham Newcastle, so I can't take those games into account. This is what I've gone for, though, on a Tuesday night. I've gone for Forest to sneak a 1-1 draw against Arsenal. I know they've not been great defensively in the Cup, but they have looked better in the league at times. Yes, they had a poor off night defensively against Brentford, but at home, I'm going to back them to shock Arsenal and get a 1-1 draw. I'm going to go for Fulham to pip Everton by 1-0, who have been in poor form, as we saw on Saturday. Luton Brighton, you know, I've gone 2-1 for the visitors, in the hope I'm wrong again. Palace Sheffield United, it's got a Roy 1-0 written all over it. He needs to win to save his job, I would imagine, because Palace are in big trouble if they don't get a result there. And for Luton, at this point, I'm not actually sure what the best result is for us. Villa Newcastle, I've gone 2-1 for the home side. Newcastle are frail on the road. Villa are starting to look strong again after a couple of poor weeks. City v Burnley, City not been that free scoring recently. De Bruyne back though, I'm sure he'll play off the bench or from the start in this one. And at some point he's going to feature and do something special. No Haaland is meaning they're lacking a bit of a clinical edge. Alvarez does waste more chances. I'm going to go 3-0 and comfortable this time. Spurs v Brentford, I've gone 3-1 for the host. They played okay against City without really having a threat. Of course they're missing Son, but Maddison back will probably start after his cameo at the weekend. Liverpool v Chelsea, I've gone for 4-1 to the host. Of course, Jurgen Klopp's announcement shocked most of the Premier League. I'm sure they'll win in the Cup on Sunday. I might be proven wrong. But I think it's going to be fever pitch at Anfield in midweek with the season ticket holders in. It's going to be a big atmosphere, and I think Liverpool will make Chelsea crumble. That's my personal opinion. We saw even in a Luton game, if you score a goal against them, they become weak for a while. Chelsea were excellent against Borough and ruthless to get the job done though, and that'll be a preview of the Carabao Cup final in a few weeks, which has moved our Liverpool game. West Ham Bournemouth, I've gone for a 2-2 draw. Calvin Phillips in at West Ham, and more crucially in my opinion, despite being brilliant individually at AFCON, Mohamed Kudus is back for West Ham, or I would imagine he's back, because he is out of AFCON with Ghana, despite individually getting 2 Man of the Match awards and playing brilliantly. And in the final game, Wolves versus Manchester United, I've just got a gut feel on a 1-0 away win. And I know there's not much to base that on. Might change if Newport shock them tomorrow. And Wolves have obviously got a local game against West Brom. I'm going to go for 1-0 for the visitors. But that one's based a little bit off a hunch rather than any stats. So those are my predictions for Matchday 22. Do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know in the comments below. And give me your predictions for Matchday 22. As I mentioned before, if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in Friday's recap as we look ahead to Newcastle v Luton. For now though, if you did enjoy this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. And later in the summer, I'm going to be doing a nostalgic trip on my Football Manager channel. We're going to go back to FM09 and relive the -30 season. So come and follow us over there as well. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you again here on Friday for Matchday 23.